So here is my little NSU Prinz. Very funny little car. It is not running and was sitting, I think, since probably the 70s or 80s. Not even totally sure, but it's been sitting inside, luckily. It's all original paint, super solid, decently straight, other than a little crinkle in the front. But I want to get it running. Now the first step to get it running is, of course, to polish it. What you see me doing here is a light cutting pass. This gets rid of any of the heavy oxidization and some of the light scratches as well. The next step is to take the finer pad and some swirl remover polish and go over the entire car again to give it more of a high gloss look. The crinkled area in the front I just basically did by hand with a microfiber. Had to remove the light to get a little bit of access, but I think it turned out good. Otherwise, the rest of the car is looking quite good. So now the bumpers don't match the rest of the car. We need to fix that. Some light polishing to remove the surface rust, and we're left with a super shiny bumper. The chrome they used back in the day is just incredible. There, now I can actually focus on getting this machine running. But first, let's make sure it stops. Removing the wheels exposes 4 aluminum drum brakes. I actually need a puller to take these off. The idea is to use this guy and these arms and see if I can somehow, something like that. See if this works. I'll be fiddling around for a while, I think. And there we have it, one pulling contraption thing. It's actually nicely in the center, so I think this should work. Once off, the pads are exposed. Now these pads are ancient and would probably disintegrate if I use them. One crinkle in the front is enough for me. I need to replace the pads and the wheel cylinders too. Alright, so I initially wasn't even recording because I thought this side would be the same as the other side. But this other cable here is the speedo cable, and it's driven by this guy. It's right through the hub. And it's actually driven by the bearing cover cap. There's a little square hole in it. That's right, the wheel bearing cap drives the speedometer. Kinda crazy. The speedo cable goes into the hub and is mated to a center shaft via worm gear. There's no bearings in here either, so I'll have to make sure this is greased up. Next up, let's remove the suspension. So, I undid the brake lines on both sides, and there's a few bolts on the other side here holding the beam in. You'll notice it's supported because I want to take the entire front subframe out, yeah. I had to take the steering wheel off actually, because the rod connected to your rack here, that's actually, that goes all the way through and you have to remove it, you have to drop the whole thing. So this will be interesting, hopefully it's lifted high enough, but yeah, it's ready to go out. Oh, single grease nipple there, that's where the wheel cylinder line went in. Few bushings, very simple. Steering's kind of funny. spring-loaded, so it does go back to center. Hoping to get some new bushings in there. Super cool. Two halves. Wow. My steering box, I guess. It's so simple. Slowly cleaning it up, the grease and dirt definitely hid the original paint very well. It's cleaning up pretty nice. To remove the red paint, I'm using some tape. Seems to work okay. The rest basically will just be done by scrubbing. Alright, so the front subframe is basically cleaned and ready to go back together. These bolts basically are the control arm to subframe. Go in these bushings here. This one came out super easily. Just a few taps and it just slid out. The other side was a disaster. I'll show you what happened. So I suppose this is the stuff I should film, however I just got carried away trying to get it out. This was ridiculously stuck. So at first I was like lightly tapping because I didn't want to wreck the thread, and then I realized that it was not going anywhere. So I was like slowly hitting harder and harder, and then ended up welding a nut on the end, which actually broke the bolt, and welding a nut on the other end, spinning it, still stuck. Ended up slowly getting it to move, and then I pulled this out, was able to cut, and then I drilled out the other side. And then took the bushing off and then hammered this piece through. So, total disaster. Good thing I have parts NSUs, but yeah. So there's two bolts that I got plated. One's longer than the other one. So obviously the short ones go on this side. Long ones go on this side. And then I got all my little washers and stuff too. New shocks, tie rods, bushings, and new boots for the steering arms. It's ready to go back in. Ugh, I'm surprised how nice that actually cleaned up. And I cleaned the belly of the Prinz too. I'm still blown away by the condition of this car. I sprayed a light layer of wax on this entire area. Hopefully it'll be preserved for many years to come. The subframe was now ready to be mated to the Prinz once again. And some freshly plated hardware will hold it all together. Stay tuned for the next episode where I tackle the brakes and brake lines.